School Board of the City of Virginia Beach is now in session. This is our formal meeting format. At this time, I ask that my colleagues and everyone in attendance please silence their electronic devices and phones. The purpose of this special meeting is for the school board to discuss and take action on the school operating budget for fiscal year 2019-2020 and the Capital Improvement Program, CIP, for fiscal year 2019-2020 through 2024-2025, and to discuss additional funds for full-day kindergarten. I ask my colleagues to acknowledge their presence on the voting board. And Mrs. Melnick is not with us this afternoon. She is in Hawaii on a family trip. At this time, I'm asking everyone to join me in a moment of silence. Please rise as you are able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The chair will entertain a motion to adopt the agenda. The motion is made by Mrs. Holtz, seconded by Mrs. Rye. The voting board is open. The agenda has been adopted. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the resolution regarding school operating budget for fiscal year 2019-2020. The motion is made by Mrs. Rye, seconded by... What? Oh, I'm sorry. The motion is made by Mrs. Friggs, seconded by Mrs. Weems. The voting board, is there discussion? Seeing none, the voting board is open.
Do you want the resolution read?
I think we will. Hang on just a second.
Usually you read before.
I know, we should probably have read the resolution beforehand. Is that okay if we read it now? Okay, and then we'll vote. So, Mr. McDonald.
Thank you. Budget Resolution Fiscal Year 2019-2020. Whereas the mission of Virginia Beach City Public Schools, VBCPS, in partnership with the entire community is to empower every student to become a lifelong learner who is a responsible, productive, and engaged citizen within the global community. And whereas the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach has adopted a comprehensive strategic plan and school improvement priorities to guide budgetary decisions. And whereas the school board has studied the recommended fiscal year 2019-2020 operating budget in view of state and federal requirements, the strategic plan, priorities, community expectations, competitive compensation for employees, and the best educational interests of its students. And whereas the next phase, third year of the 5-year implementation plan of the planned expansion of the VBCPS full-day kindergarten program is included in this budget. And whereas the city school revenue sharing policy provides 34.11% of certain general fund revenues to meet obligations of the school board of the City of Virginia Beach. And whereas the proposed operating budget moves all eligible employees up an experience step, 0.5%, not to exceed the top of scale, and provides a 2.5% cost of living adjustment, COLA, for all employees. And whereas the total funds requested for fiscal year 2019-2020 from the City of Virginia Beach to the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach are $448,537, and whereas the debt service payment is estimated to be $45,356,996, leaving a balance of $402,643,541 to allocate between the operating budget and capital improvement program, CIP. And whereas $5,800,000 of the school special reserve fund, which would have been normally used for major one-time purchases, will now be budgeted to use for the fiscal year 2019-2020 operating budget. Now, therefore, be it resolved that $3,591,000 of the Sandbridge Tax Increment Financing TIF to be allocated to the school's PAYGO for CIP, with the remaining $409,000 earmarked for the operating budget, bringing it to a total of $403,052,541. And be it further resolved that the federal funds in the amount of $12,200,000, along with state funds in the amount of $364,462,756, and other local funds in the amount of $3,768,341 be added to the operating budget, bringing it to a total of, for fiscal year 2019-2020, of $783,483,638. And be it further resolved that $5,800,000 of the school reserve special revenue fund be added to the operating budget, bringing the total to $789,283,638. And be it further resolved that the school board of the city of Virginia Beach requests a lump sum appropriation of $789,283,638 from the City Council of Virginia Beach for the school board fiscal year 2019-2020 operating budget. And be it further resolved that the school board of the city of Virginia Beach requests an appropriation of $116,662,679 for categorical grants and other special revenue funds comprised of federal grants in the amount of $43,941,899, state grants in the amount of $20,948,312, local grants in the amount of $1,071,964, Green Run Collegiate in the amount of $3,913,938, and other special revenue funds in the amount of $46,786,566. And be it finally resolved that a copy of this resolution be spread across the official minutes of the school board, and the clerk of the school board is directed to deliver a copy of this resolution to the mayor, each member of city council, the city manager, and the city clerk.
Are there any further questions or comments? Mrs. Weems?
Yes, like I said this last week, and I just wanted to say it again. I appreciate Farrell and our budget team back there that have worked so hard these last few months. And Dr. Spence, I think this budget really reflects what the community has been talking about so much in the last 2 years, and that is special education and student safety. So I appreciate all the add-ins to that and prioritizing that, because I think that's a very important thing, and we've heard it from our constituents, and so I just appreciate that. So I will definitely support the budget. Thank you.
Any other comments? Mrs. Rye?
I just want to add to that with regard to the staff. They fielded many questions, and rightly so. I understand it's their job to do so from those of us up here, but whether it was via phone or email, just thank you for the prompt responses that helped us navigate this process.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing no other comments, the voting board is open. No, that was this one. Okay. The resolution regarding school operating budget for the year 2019-2020 has been approved. The chair will now entertain a motion to approve the resolution regarding the Capital Improvement Program CIP for fiscal year 2019-2020 through 2024-25. The motion is made by Mrs. Riggs, seconded by Mr. Edwards. Is there discussion? Mrs. Manning.
Yes, I would just like to ask the school board to consider in the future the types of schools that we are building to save money. I believe that in the past we've been using very expensive architectural designs. Perhaps we could look into using the same plans more than once in order to save money. And for that reason, as I have in the past, I'll be voting against the CIP.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Mrs. Weems? Oops.
Yeah, this is a tough one. In fact, I was speaking with Tony Arnold today, and some of my other friends that are builders, and some of my relatives that are builders in Northern Virginia, and the CIP. I understand we have to build great buildings because they're going to last 100 years, and I get that. But as a taxpayer and one who talks to our taxpayers a lot, teachers, people in the private business, one of their main conversations to me and questions is, why are y'all building those buildings? Why are they, seemingly extravagant? And why, I've got the numbers, and I know Tony can come up here and tell us that it's the going rate. When we walk in those buildings, it is overwhelming how great they are and nice they are. And I just think that I've got to kind of listen to our constituents and taxpayers, and that I think that we could probably reduce some of that spending in that area. So, and I hope that we try to do that in the future. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Edwards?
The pace of the CIP over the 6 years has got to be a concern. When you extend it out as we have beyond this 6 years, this 6-year pace puts us into the 20 to 25 years from now. We're looking at buildings where people think they probably need to be renovated or reconstructed now. So I'm certainly going to support it because it's balanced and it's the best we can do. But I didn't think I could vote on this without letting people know that, that no 2046 for a New Kempsville High School, even though that's what this supports, is not where I hope we're going to be. And I'm not convinced that ugly buildings are cheaper than nice buildings either. I mean, you can build them like a box, but the numbers that I look at are the comparables between ourselves and other school divisions, and unless there's some grandiose conspiracy amongst all of the school engineers and architects when we look at the cost per square foot, if we look at the number of square feet per student, if we look at all, and I think a lot of us up here have done that, and I know the staff has done that because they're the ones that have pulled out the numbers, but the numbers are easy to check on reference. I'm not convinced there's any significant waste to make our buildings look as nice as they are. I mean, they are nice looking buildings, and they have some really nice entryways and stuff like that, but I don't think it's putting an unjust or inappropriate burden on our taxpayers to have them that way. So, thank you.
Anyone else? Ms. Weems?
Yes, I do agree with you, Mr. Edwards, in fact, that the pacing needs to be quicker because we do have so many buildings. And I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about perhaps saving on some of our buildings. For an example, I remember a few years ago when we were talking about Old Donation School, I think a reporter or somebody said, well, couldn't you cut that by a couple $1 million? And one of us up here said, well, what would that do? Just $2 or $3 million. Well, $2 or $3 million to me is a lot. And if you just kind of cut that off of every single one, then perhaps we could get another school quicker. So I'm not saying slow down the pace, because that's part of the problem. These buildings that are being rebuilt is so unequitable to go into an Old Donation School and then a Kempsville, So, but I'm saying, and then also I think there can be a compromise between an ugly box building, and the buildings that we have now. So I don't want to slow down, and I think we should renovate and rebuild, but be more conscious about how each individual the money is spent, so that we could actually do more. Thank you.
Mrs. Manning?
I agree with Ms. Weems, and I'd also like to point out that we've won architectural design awards for our buildings, and to me, that shows dollar signs in my head. So I don't think that we should be looking for architectural design awards. We should be looking for effectively, efficiently built buildings. I use the analogy of, a Toyota and a Mercedes are going to get you to where you need to go, and they're going to both be reliable cars. But a Mercedes costs a whole lot more than a Toyota. I think we should be building Toyota level schools, not Mercedes level schools.
I don't know if you've been car shopping lately, but Toyotas cost as much as Mercedes. I just went through that, believe me. But anyway, I just want to say that some of the awards that we have won have been because we've won green school awards, and that saves money in the long run. So I believe in building buildings that are efficient, energy efficient, and also will be here 100 years from now. I'm not saying that we can't use some of the same designs more than once. That might save us some money in the long run as well. But I do think we need to build quality schools that will be here 100 years from now. Anyone else? So, pardon? I think we need to read the resolution. Thank you for reminding me.
Fiscal year 2019-20, fiscal year 2024-25 Capital Improvement Program CIP Budget Resolution. Whereas the mission of Virginia Beach City Public Schools in partnership with the entire community is to empower every student to become a lifelong learner who is a responsible, productive, and engaged citizen within the global community. And whereas the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach has adopted a comprehensive strategic plan and school improvement priorities to guide budgetary decisions. And whereas the primary funding source for the school CIP have been the Sandbridge Tax Increment Financing TIF funds and the issuance of debt by the city. And whereas the city schools revenue sharing policy provides 34.11% of certain general fund revenues to meet obligations of the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach. And whereas the city school revenue sharing policy allocates funds first to debt service while the balance is used for the operating budget. And whereas the school board has comprehensively reviewed all sources of funding, projected various scenarios, and prioritized the needs of the operating and capital improvement budgets, now therefore be it resolved that the school board of the City of Virginia Beach adopts the CIP program of $412,431,000 as shown on the attached school board funding summary and project summary dated March 5th, 2019. And be it finally resolved that a copy of this resolution be spread across the official minutes of the school board, and the clerk of the school board is directed to deliver a copy of this resolution to the mayor, each member of city council, the city manager, and city clerk.
Any further comments? Seeing none, the voting board is open. The CIP for fiscal years 2019, 2020 through 2024-25 has been approved. Next on the agenda, we will discuss asking for additional funds to finish the implementation of full-day kindergarten throughout the division. Mr. Honziker, would you please explain how much we would be asking the city in additional funds to complete this program?
Good evening, Chairman Anderson, school board members, and Dr. Spence. We went back and did a kind of a quality control look at what costs would be left, how many additional schools we would need to fund to fully fund the remaining schools. That about 16 schools. The cost that we've calculated would include the salary and fringe benefits of additional teachers, teacher assistants. Some of the schools would also get, for example, additional PE teachers because of the additional staffing and the additional full-time equivalent students. In addition to that, there will be some additional supplies and materials, equipment, furnishings, things like that. That cost, we've calculated it to be $4 million, rounded off, $4,859,000. Now, that's a little bit less than the 6 million we were thinking the last 2 years would be. And the primary reason for that, or there are two reasons. Our original estimates were a little bit higher than now we are experiencing. We've brought online the first 2 years, last year and this year, and projected next year to bring online more of the elementary schools than we had in the original phase-in plan. So we've kind of front-loaded and expensed for, if you will, these first 3 years. So the last 2 years is not going to be quite as much. So that would be the additional cost. I was also asked to calculate what one additional penny on the real estate tax would be, and I've confirmed that with the city. It's $5,717,000. So, to fund, if it's the tax increase that would be needed to do this, $4,859,000 would be 85% of 1 penny. So that would be how it could be funded with the partial penny.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Spence, I'm going to ask you to talk about, is this physically possible to do before we begin our comments?
So we think it is. I think the one issue that is an unknown would be the availability of teachers for the programs. But it's likely we know we can make it happen. We would not do it in 3 schools. So we would not want to do it in Thorogood Elementary School, John B. Dye Elementary School, or Hermitage Elementary School, because those 3 schools currently, as you know, John B. Dye is under construction, modernization, and then Thorogood is being built and, of course, being housed at Hermitage. And so we've got space issues right now at Hermitage Elementary as a result of that. So we would want to not do those 3 schools should this funding become available. We would hold on those 3, and we could do the 13, and we think we have the capacity to do that.
But those 3 schools could come online the following year, correct?
As their facilities open.
Okay. Is there any discussion on this? Mr. Edwards?
The discussion of it in the context of the tax rate increases, I think premature until I understand that is the scenario through which we are allowed to request additional funds. So the comments on that are correct. But in every resolution that we have passed, we have indicated that to the city that is supported by the school division if and only if the city is not in a position to provide those funds without a tax increase. So the formula requires that we identify that and be supportive of it, but it certainly does not mandate or require, and in all cases, this board has always hoped that the city would potentially adjust the funding formula or do, find another way around an adjustment in the tax rate, because that is certainly within their authority, and we could hope that that their revenues might put them in a position to do that, even though I know they're obviously facing many other challenges around the city in terms of municipal services.
Mr. Honziger?
Based on what Mr. Edwards just said, we would include if it's another resolution addressing just this topic, we would include the language in that resolution to speak to just exactly what and that's the same language we used a couple years ago when we asked for the funds for the phase-in. So we would include that flexible language, so it wouldn't absolutely be just tax increase.
Before you sit down,
Yes,
2
ma'am.
years ago, when we asked for an increase, for additional funds to begin implementation of full-day kindergarten, just for the public to, so that they're aware, we did ask for the full amount 2 years ago. We asked, I believe it was 14 million.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
And the city at that time chose not to give us the full amount. They chose to give us 6.7. And so, at the end of this coming budget cycle that we just approved tonight, that's when we will have utilized all those funds. So what we're basically asking for is additional funds that we would be able to complete it. Basically it's 4.9 million that we were asking for, which is actually a little, it's a little less than what we asked for 2 years ago.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Any others? Ms. Weems?
Oh, where do I begin? Oh, I am deeply concerned about this. And when we say, Mr. Edwards, I'm going to piggyback on what you said. We hope that they don't raise our taxes. We hope that the city council has extra money for schools. Has that happened? Where they just say, yeah, we'll give you an extra $5 million for whatever, and we're not going to raise taxes?
I don't remember it happening since I've been here.
Okay,
but,
it hasn't. I don't believe, because again, you have. Yes, yeah, over 2. So, and we did this 2 years ago, and some of us that did not vote for the tax increase, one of our fears was going to be, we're going to have to come back here and do it again, and we're like, no, we won't have to do that again. So I find it interesting too that we've been sitting here for weeks and weeks, and we've had teachers come up here, we've had the VBEA come here and talk about teacher salaries, talk about paying for their own school supplies, although some of the information was not correct. But basically, we've heard from teachers saying, give us, more money, we need more money, we need more money. And and we don't need any programs until we, give our employees good raises and et cetera, et cetera. And then at the last minute, we had our own colleagues, which some of you are on the VBA, lifelong memberships of VBA, say, no, we can't do it because there's nothing to cut, it's the state's fault, and et cetera, and now we're asking for a tax increase, not for teachers, but for kindergarten. So I have a problem with that as well. I think with a budget of, what did we say, our total budget is over $900 million, roughly $905 million, and we can't come up with $4.8 million. I think we need to go back to some budgeting 101. Examples, we've got a software program that's over $3 million, or right around $3 million. We did one-to-one technology, several $1 million, and we're not going to debate those now, but we have made choices, and we have chosen not to come up with this money because we've used it in different places. And again, it seems like, well, in the last 2 or 3 years, we're going to say we don't have the money, so let's just ask for a tax increase. And this tax increase is on our employees. On one hand, we're saying employees don't get enough money, but on the other hand, we're taking it out of their pocket to fund another program. It's not right. I don't think it's right at all. And again, we have got a very, very hearty, good, solid budget. And if we wanted the kindergarten to be quicker, we would have used the money perhaps differently a few years ago. And I understand, we didn't use it all, and there's different reasons for that. But for the taxpayer out there that saw us raise taxes to full fund day kindergarten, and we only used a part of it, and again, it was in the resolution, we weren't trying to hide anything from city council, but again, we're coming back and asking for, again, another tax increase to do the same thing that we were supposed to do a couple years ago. It just doesn't look good. So I will not in any shape, form, or fashion support an increase in taxes to fund full day kindergarten.
Mrs. Manning?
So I looked at our revenue sharing agreement before we came here because I wanted to see what it actually said. And it does specifically state that if the school board asks for any additional funds, it is understood that we are supporting a tax increase. The city can't afford to fund all of its police officers, its cars. They can't afford to fix our flooding concerns. They're looking at their own ask for a tax increase right now. So I very much doubt that they're going to just find some extra money to be able to give us without raising taxes. I agree with Ms. Weems that we do have money that we can find. I asked for how much money we're spending on software in our classrooms, and it's at least $7 million. That doesn't even include Microsoft Office licensing, so I'm sure that drastically adds to the cost. 40% of our students are on free or reduced lunch. To ask for a tax increase and put it on the backs of our families who are already struggling is not fair. Also, as Ms. Weems mentioned, the teachers asked us to not put anything else ahead of teacher compensation. And if we are going to ask to accelerate the implementation of the kindergarten program, I think that's a slap in the face to the teachers who've been up here talking to us over the last month. I think I have an idea of why Councilwoman called our chair to ask us to accelerate this program, because next year's an election year, and she's up for re-election. She's not going to want to ask for a tax increase next year, and neither are some of those other members who are up for re-election. So I believe that this is partly political as well. I support the full implementation of kindergarten, even though I didn't support it initially. This board has voted to make it happen, and I think that we need to implement it and fully implement it. But I think that we need to stick with the plan that we have, and we need to find it in our current budget to do so. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak? Mrs. Rye?
So I acknowledge all the comments, and one of the reasons that makes me seriously consider this is that universal full-day kindergarten is one of those rare subjects that seems to have universal appeal in this city. And I think that was the reason why it passed as it did a few years ago. We understand what was passed 2 years ago never would have fully funded all the schools, so I just hope that's not a misconception out there. The way I see it, if we can get kindergarten funded now, or at least make the effort, and it's up to us to state our case, to make the case, then it does free up discussion next year for a higher focus on employee compensation. We won't have kindergarten still the monkey on our back, that we need. So I do certainly agree, and I took to heart all the teachers who came forward this budget season, and in my view, that could be our true focus next go round. And if we could get kindergarten passed now, and have all the schools, so we don't have this zone with it and this school without it, I just think that's why it's worthy of the discussion.
Anyone else? Mrs. Riggs?
And I tend to agree with all that Mrs. Rice said. Yes, I am an advocate for the teachers and always have been, and they know it, and all the other employees of our school system, just like many of us are up here. But I am looking at equity in the city, and I know that this is something that I constantly get asked, well, when is this school going to get their full-day kindergarten? And when is my school? And I have to wait. So I think from what I'm hearing, or I'm getting the feeling from residents and people that are asking me that they want it now. They want it for their school. And so it makes a difference. It makes a difference when people come in and they buy their homes. That's one of the questions they're asking our real estate agents. Does this area have full-day kindergarten? It's something that people are looking for. I think that if we implement it now, it's going to be a little cheaper from what you said to go ahead and do it now than what we had projected. And this will free up that money. And as I said, at the last couple of meetings, I will not be voting for any more programs until we do increase the compensation. But this one is something that we started. I think we need to go ahead and finish it. If we can get that support from city council to do that, I think it's time to do it.
Mrs. Hughes?
We have an almost billion-dollar budget, and it's a pretty large chunk of the entire state budget. And I realized kindergarten got passed before I got here, and once you made the resolution, you need to go ahead and do it. I also understand that what was asked for was less than what you got. As I understand it, not all of that was used for kindergarten. And now we're asking for another raise for kindergarten, knowing that it cannot be implemented in 3 of the schools, which means we're probably going to be asking for more money again down the road. And home buyers may be asking about if full-day kindergarten is in their neighborhoods, but they're also wondering what their taxes are going to be to buy those homes. I've heard teacher after teacher come up and speak about how they can't afford to live in the city. So they did not get the raise they thought they were going to get this year, but they are going to get a tax raise, which means they and a lot of other residents, including everybody here who lives in this city, is going to lose money out of their paychecks because they're going to come out behind. And I will not be voting for a tax raise. We have a pretty hefty budget and we can live within our means. There are other things we should be spending less money on to get this done.
Mr. Honsiger, it was my understanding that the 4.9 million that we would be asking for does include those 3 schools, the cost for those 3 schools, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, so we would not have to come back to ask for more money just to bring those schools online the following year. I mean, and I haven't, this is my personal opinion, I haven't ruled out Dr. Spence John B. Dye because it's one of my adopted schools this year. And so I do know that they have some rooms within their building, within the building itself that could possibly be utilized. So I that's just my personal opinion, but I just wanted you to know that, I have been over there and toured the school, and I do know that they have a couple of rooms that they would be willing to use because they certainly don't want to pass up the opportunity to go online with us and have full-day kindergarten as well. But that's just me. But the other thing is I just want to say that for me, it has to do with equity across our schools, equity and fairness to our citizens of our communities. And that's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing people say, when are we going to be the ones? And I happen to live in a neighborhood that doesn't have full-day kindergarten and was not part of the schools that we were planning to do for next year as part of the budget. And then a couple weeks ago, we actually heard that there's a possibility, if we don't get extra funding, that we might even have to put off our implementation into the 6th year, just if we try to do it within our own budget. So that to me is totally unacceptable, especially when you're talking about we have 9 schools that do not have it at all. And I know that the reason for the 4.9 is not just to cover those 9 schools, but also to cover the fact that we're going to have to start covering the cost of the Title I schools once everybody goes online. So that takes that into consideration as well. So I think we really need to move forward with this. It is not something, when we first started, we asked for 14 million. The city said, we'll give you 6.7. They didn't give us exactly what we asked for. But I feel like now is the opportunity to move ahead with this, and it's the right thing to do. Kindergarten teachers that I've spoke to across the city have been overwhelmingly supportive of this. They all think, they thank me profusely when I walk in their buildings. Thank you, they say, for bringing us full-day kindergarten. And so I feel so terrible when I walk in the schools that don't have it, and I feel terrible in my own community. The Trentwood community that doesn't have it. I feel like, Trentwood is just as deserving of a school as any other school in this city. And so as far as the equity goes, for that reason alone, we need to move forward with this, put this behind us. And it will allow us to focus next year more on issues that have to do with paying our teachers a fair wage. So I think this is something that if we could do it now, if City Council is willing to move ahead with this, let's do this. Let's move ahead as fast as we can. Let's bring these schools online. And, you know, I feel like this is something we need to do right away. So, Mrs. Weems.
Farrell, so last time we got 6.5 million. We didn't use it all because we bought buses for some of that and one-time expenses. So how's it going to work this time? Because we have 3 schools that it can't be used for. So what are we going to do with that money that's left over? Because we're not going to use the $4.8 million all at once because we can only do 2/3 of the schools. So we're still going to have an equity issue.
We would be
So do
doing
we
one-
earmark that and just save it and sit it there and don't spend it? Or do we spend it on one-time expenses?
Same kind of things we did before, spend it on one time kind of
Right.
thing.
Okay, so when my colleagues are shaking their head, no, we're not going to come back for a tax increase. This is exactly what we did 2 years ago. We asked, we got 6.5 million. We only spent a couple million on full day kindergarten. We spent the rest on one-time expenses, school buses, whatever. Then we're coming back. We're going to be doing the same thing. We're only going to spend part of the money, and then we're going to have to spend the other on one-time expenses. So in a year or two, when Thorogood and Hermitage and John B. Dye
No.
don't outrule that we won't come back because we have spent that money on one-time expenses. Okay?
I don't
So
see
I have a problem with that. And again, if we have a 900 million budget, we should have been able to come up with 4.8 million for this. You don't ask taxpayers to fund
please.
stuff that you can't fund in your operating budget. I mean, this is just in our own households. We pay for necessities. Do you know how long I've been wanting to get my hardwood floors redone? 6 years, but it's not a necessity. And even though this is equitable in some of your eyes, Farrell, if we don't do this now, does that mean we're not going to implement full day kindergarten? Or are we going to, if we don't get a tax increase and don't do it now, we're still in a plan to implement full day
We
kindergarten,
would still
right?
plan to implement it and phase it.
Okay, so this, it sounds like it's either now or never, and I want to make sure that we know that that's not the case.
I want to go to Dr. Spence real quick so that he can clarify a couple of misinformation that was just said.
Just relative to the financing, I just want to make sure that there's good clarity across the community on this issue. So the money that was allotted was an annual amount. So that's money that continues to come in. So it wasn't a one-time, we asked for we received 6.7 million from the city, and we only spent a part of that on kindergarten, and then we spent the rest on a one-time expense, and then that was it. So we didn't actually spend it all in kindergarten. We intentionally planned to, over the course of 3 years, spend the entirety of the 6.7 million annual amount on kindergarten. The budget that you just passed tonight includes the final set of schools that we can fund under the 6.7 million. So we are now, in this next budget, spending all of the tax amount on kindergarten.
Okay.
And so what, relative to Farrell's answer, was if you were to ask for a tax increase again to fund full day kindergarten, and relative to really specific to your point about the 13 schools versus the 16 schools, that we would immediately endeavor to use the funds for 13 of those schools. We would then have to draw back funds for 3 of those schools for a year or 2, depending on when the facilities open. And then we would ultimately use all of those funds to complete the full day kindergarten expansion. So there would never be a point where we would have to come back and say there's more funding needed relative to kindergarten. You would be getting on an annual basis with what Farrell has indicated was 0.85 cents. The remaining funds that would be necessary for us on the administrative side to complete full day. I just want to make sure from a financial standpoint that that's perfectly clear. There was never a point in time where there was not a plan to use the $6.7 million that was allocated through that tax increase for kindergarten. It is now all being used for kindergarten. But the resolution as it was written was during the phase-in, there will be 2 years of one-time purchases for the dollars that won't be spent on that.
So it's a placeholder, basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, until you got to
It's a
where we could
placeholder
roll the rest of the schools
until
in.
you can roll the rest of the schools and ease back and make sure. I still don't know why we're in the same position that coming back, because this is what we were told 2 years ago. And I remember it being asked on the dais, are we going to have to come back? And it was definitely, no, we're not going to
No,
have
it
to do
was
that.
not.
We're
Absolutely
gonna
not.
Get and what?
We didn't get the full amount we asked for.
Oh, if we would have gotten the full amount. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I still do not think that we need to again, with this big of a budget, and considering all the things that we've heard from our own dais up here about teacher salaries, and considering that we have spent money, we have chosen to spend money, and I'm not, again, debating the merits of how we spend it right now, because we've done that the last month, that we could have implemented full-day kindergarten, use our own resources, and not have to raise taxes.
Mrs. Manning.
Yeah, I would just like to address Ms. Riggs' comment regarding real estate. As a realtor, I've never had anyone say, I don't want to move to Virginia Beach because you don't have full-day kindergarten. I guarantee you, the real estate industry and realtors in this area are not going to be happy about a tax increase on our citizens because it's going to negatively affect the market. The average homeowner in Virginia Beach is probably going to see between what the city wants to ask for and what it appears this board wants to ask for. The average citizen's going to have a $600 increase in their tax assessment. That's a lot of money, especially for those families who are on free and reduced lunch. The 40% of our students are on free and reduced lunch. So this isn't just money's coming out of nowhere. The money is coming out of the pockets of our teachers, of our parents, of our citizens. And I hope that every one of you will remember that. Thank you.
I just want to be clear that 85% of a penny is not $600 out of people's pockets. 1 penny assessment on a $400,000 house.
No, I'm saying what the city wants to ask for, and the 1 cent that we originally told. If you asked for 2 cents and the average price of a house is $300,000 in Virginia Beach, yes, that is $600.
But that's not what we're asking for. We're not asking for all of that. We're asking
Okay, it's
for
slightly less than
$4.9 million.
$600. It's
And
still a
so
lot of
it
money.
is up to the city council whether or not they choose to do a tax increase. I know that we have to ask for it that way because that's the way the funding formula is written, but it's really up to city council whether they choose to do it through a tax increase or not. So that's theirs. Mr. Edwards.
Since we're making Mr. Hunsaker the point man, I'll address my question to him. If we do not ask for and receive additional funds for kindergarten, we would implement full-day kindergarten ultimately in the next few years, 2, 3, maybe, it might be a year 7, I don't know. But Farrell, that funding for those positions to bring full-day kindergarten online would, I assume, if not brought in through what we're talking about in terms of a tax rate adjustment, would be from the natural growth of the budget through the assessments rising and stuff like that. And I believe those are the very funds that we normally look to try to address the compensation issues for our employees. And my concern is if we swallow the full-day kindergarten pill internally, which it would be great if we did it, we're boxing those dollars out for years 2 and 3 from where we are now, out of what we can do for compensation. And
It would be in competition with.
that's the concern I've got is, yes, I have heard everything. You know, I supported the budget tonight, even though it does not do everything that I know we can and should do for teachers because it's all we've got. But I am hopeful that we can address compensation, and I hate to, through, as I say, internalizing the implementation of full-day kindergarten without the increment that we had addressed all along relative to full-day kindergarten. I just don't think it's the right thing, and I think we need to at least ask for it and hopefully receive it. Thank you.
Mrs. Weems.
Can you get this, or do we just need to ask this from city council? How many taxes have been, increase in taxes have been done in the last couple of years? And I mean, fees, because, you know, all these new fees that they give us, that's taxes, then they just call it another name. So can you get that, or do I need to just contact them and get it?
We can get it.
Okay.
We
like-
would need to ask the city, but I'm sure they have.
Okay,
yeah.
because, you know, we have to remember too that we as taxpayers have been taxed, and we have been sent fees for our dog licensing fees, you know, more in our trash fee, more and a whole bunch of stuff. So we need to remember that.
We can get that information and get that back out via email.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Mrs. Rye?
This is a question, and I don't mean to put legislative on the spot or staff, because I should have researched checked this out further before coming here, but I did run into a delegate this week, and what do we know about the General Assembly legislation concerning a kindergarten law? That, is it true that both houses passed a time deadline?
I know it was gaining momentum, but to be honest with you, I lost track of it. I'll have to get that answer for you and where that is and if it's gotten to the governor's desk.
So we'll just qualify it now by saying it might have passed both houses, and if I understood correctly, it was for
It's a
2 years.
3-year, it was for a 3-year implementation requiring all school divisions that didn't have it to have it. So we can get that answer. That's an easy answer to get for you. If that's the case, we'll have to do this anyway and we'll have to find the funding for it. But I mean, I think it's as I shared during the session with our folks up there, it's been clear that it's the board's intent to get it done anyway. It was kind of a moot point legislation because
yeah.
Chesapeake's in the same boat. And so it was really, as we started all this, it was Loudon, Chesapeake, and Virginia Beach who didn't have full-day kindergarten. And at this point, Loudon, Chesapeake, and Virginia Beach are all well on the road to full-day kindergarten.
Which made me
So-
surprised they were even discussing it, but it led me to think that we might not have the option of projecting it forward as far ahead as we thought we might be able to. So to be checked out, thank you.
Yep, we'll look at it.
Do we have any other comments or suggestions?
Yes, Chairman. Yes.
Mrs. Felton?
It was stated a few minutes ago about equity being in the eyesight of most of us, and it is. Equity is in my eyesight. When I think about poverty, poverty is not just a lack of food or clothing or sustainable housing. It is a lack of resources. It is a lack of a fair and equitable education. And to me, education is one of the foundation of the equitable level playing field for all students. Most parents, that is depending on this school board to make sure that their child get an equitable level foundation playing field. They depend on us to do that. And education is that thing. Kindergarten is the foundation of that fair and equitable education. So I am in full support of this universal thing, appeal called kindergarten, to make sure that all of our children, all of them, receive that standard and quality education.
Thank you, Mrs. Felton. Mrs. Hughes?
I don't think anyone up here is saying that the kindergarten program shouldn't be implemented. It's just where you get the money. And for everyone who's concerned about equity, all these extra taxes and fees hit lower income people the hardest. That's equity also.
Any others? Dr. Speck?
Just a quick answer to that question. Just did a quick LIS search. It got left in appropriations, so it did not come out.
Okay, thank you. I do know that it's something that they discussed, though. They were trying to get it passed. So my feeling is it's something that we started. We knew when we started this 2 years ago that we didn't have the money to finish it. We understood that we were going to have to come back and I understood we were going to have to come back and ask the city council for more money. We had hoped that we might be able to do this within our budget, and Dr. Spence brought that up and said there was a possibility we might be able to do it within our own budget without asking for more funds. But it was understood all along when we asked 2 years ago that since they did not give us the money that we asked for 2 years ago, that we would be back in 2 years. And I was told, City Council was actually expecting us to come back and ask for funds to finish implementing full-day kindergarten, so. Any others? We will have this on our agenda next week for action, and there will be an opportunity for people to come up and talk, if you have any, the public to come and talk, because it is on action. So that's why we decided we would wait, and we will put it on action for next week. Since there's no further discussion, we are adjourned.